It's been a bit of a shock. However much one tries to prepare oneself for something like this, it's still a dreadful shock, and we're still trying to come to terms with that.
Thank you so much for all you do. It simply wouldn't work without you.
Windsor had never been so eerily silent. There were no arguments, no chaotic press conferences, no one slamming tables or raising their voices. There was only Prince Edward entering the room, with a heavy air bearing news capable of shaking the very foundations of the British royal family. He was not the one who had made the decision, but he was the one tasked with confirming it. And the moment Edward began to speak, everything changed. According to the scenario laid out here, Prince Harry was no longer on the list of legitimate heirs to the throne. Archie and Lilibet were affected as well. In just a few brief sentences, one branch of the family was cast out of the line of succession, while Prince Andrew, Princess Beatrice, Princess Eugenie, Prince Edward, and Edward's children all moved up a step. Yet the most shocking thing was not that Edward had moved closer to the throne, it was that he showed absolutely no sign of triumph. Edward understood all too well that his family was only moving up because another part of the family had just lost its place. It was no reward. It was a burden born of a family fracture. Moments later, the amended document was placed before King Charles. The king said nothing. He simply gazed for a long time at three names: Harry, Archie, and Lilibet. To the crown, this was a matter of succession. But to Charles, they were his son. They were his grandchildren. And it was that very silence that made the story more painful than any official statement could ever be. Before we go back to see what actually led to this decision, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. I'd also love to know, where are you following this story from? Please leave your city or country in the comments section, because the biggest question remains, what happened behind the doors at Windsor that caused a family rift to escalate to the point of altering the line of succession? To understand why Edward ultimately found himself facing such a momentous decision, we must go back a few months to a private meeting inside Windsor Castle, where the real crisis began. There were no cameras that day, no reporters, and no public statements. There were only King Charles, Prince Harry, and Prince Edward sitting in a private room and confronting an issue the palace had been trying to resolve for months. Prior to the meeting, Harry had received several private letters. These letters did not merely address his long-term residence abroad or his withdrawal from regular royal duties. They raised a far more sensitive question: should an unforeseen constitutional crisis arise, would Harry still be prepared to fulfill the responsibilities attached to his place in the line of succession? Charles wanted a clear answer. Edward was present as an intermediary. He was Charles's younger brother, yet sufficiently removed from the deep-seated rifts between Charles William and Harry to prevent the exchange from devolving into a purely personal confrontation. Then Charles placed a document before his son. No preamble, no direct threats. The core message was simple. Harry was asked to confirm in writing that he remained willing to discharge the constitutional obligations that might arise from his position in the line of succession. Harry picked up the document. He read through it paragraph by paragraph slowly. Upon reaching the end, he paused. He read it through once more. Charles did not press him. Edward remained silent. A few seconds later, Harry set the document down and slid it back across the table. "I will not sign." No voices were raised. Yet it was that very calmness that made the atmosphere in the room turn icy. For Harry, signing the document was not merely a matter of acknowledging a responsibility on paper. He believed the palace was trying to tether the independent life he had chosen to the very institutional constraints he had sought to escape. If he agreed, Harry feared the door to his old obligations would swing open once more. Charles, however, viewed the matter quite differently. The king made it clear that Harry was free to choose an independent life. But if a constitutional role carries responsibilities, then rejecting those responsibilities could entail consequences. Harry stood up. He left the room without signing. There was no shouting, no heated argument. Only a sheet of paper remained, with a blank space where Harry's signature should have been. Edward stayed with Charles. Then, a few minutes later, William walked in. He saw the document on the table, picked it up, and began to read. Near the bottom of the page, William paused. There was a warning Harry had left behind. If the refusal to proceed continued, a formal review of his status could be triggered. William looked back at the empty space intended for his brother's signature. In that moment, he understood something Harry perhaps hadn't fully grasped when he walked out of Windsor. This was no longer just a warning. It had become a countdown. And what William did next would make the way Harry viewed him in the months that followed far more painful. But what Harry didn't know when he left Windsor that day was that William saw exactly the danger looming over his younger brother, and rather than hastening it, William had quietly tried to do the opposite. In the weeks following the meeting, private exchanges between Harry and the palace continued. The warnings became less familial in tone and increasingly resembled an institutional issue requiring a clear resolution. At the heart of it all lay a single question. Could someone retain their place in the line of succession while permanently separating themselves from the obligations attached to that position? For Harry, the answer seemed clear. He had built a different life elsewhere and did not want his family's independence to remain tethered to the palace's demands. But for William, the situation was far more complex. Catherine was the first to notice. In the days following the Windsor meeting, William grew uncharacteristically quiet. He would spend longer reading briefing papers, often pausing mid-page, as if his mind were miles away. Catherine didn't need to ask much to realize this went beyond mere work. Eventually, William admitted he had been aware of at least one of the warnings concerning Harry before Edward was asked to confirm anything, and he had repeatedly considered calling his brother. One evening, William stood by the window, his phone in hand. He opened his contacts. Harry's old number was still there. William's finger hovered over the call button. Just one tap. But he didn't do it. After a few silent moments, William locked the screen and set the phone down. Catherine understood that his hesitation didn't stem from coldness. William feared he no longer had the ability to call Harry simply as a brother. He was the heir to the throne. And in a debate directly concerning the succession, any words from William could easily be perceived by Harry as a warning from the future king. A remark like, "Think it over," could be interpreted as, "You must do this." Advice from an older brother could instantly morph into pressure from the crown. So William did not call, but that did not mean he took no action. Behind closed doors, William consulted senior advisors regarding the process taking shape around Harry. As the prospect of a formal review became increasingly likely, William made a very specific request: give Harry more time. He argued that his brother should not lose the opportunity simply because of a decision made in a tense room at Windsor. If Harry needed more time to grasp the full consequences of refusing to sign, William wanted him to have it. Not just a few hours, not a final phone call, but a genuine chance to reconsider. The request was granted. The deadline was extended. For a brief period, William had reason to hope that Harry might revisit the Windsor statement, read it over, and find a compromise acceptable to both sides. But day after day, the signature never came. Harry did not change his mind. The deadline ticked on, and with each passing day, the issue drifted further away from a mere father-son disagreement and closer to a formal succession review. That was also when the silence between the brothers became dangerous, because Harry did not know what William had been doing behind the scenes. He did not know that William had asked for more time. He did not know that the very brother he had grown to distrust was trying to prevent the door from closing too soon. From Harry's perspective, all signs pointed to a different conclusion. The palace was tightening the screws, and William Charles's future successor must surely be playing a part in it. Yet the reality was quite the opposite. While Harry had come to believe that William was orchestrating the pressure to push him out of the line of succession, it was actually William who had quietly kept the door open for his younger brother for as long as possible. And when the deadline passed with the agreement still unsigned, William realized that the silence could not go on any longer. The next time the brothers sat face to face, it would not just be old wounds standing between them. On the table would lie a document capable of altering the futures of Harry, Archie, and Lilibet. But the time William had tried to buy for Harry had finally run out. With the Windsor Agreement still unsigned, William realized he could no longer stand back and hope things would simply resolve themselves. If Harry was about to face a decision that could impact his children's futures, William wanted his brother to hear the truth directly from him. The meeting was arranged amidst a suffocatingly tense atmosphere. On the table between the brothers lay just two documents. One was the Windsor Agreement Harry had previously refused to sign. The other document was far more daunting, a revised order of succession. Harry looked down at the pages, then up at William. To him, the appearance of the second document seemed to confirm what he had suspected for months. The pressure was no longer about persuasion. It was on the verge of becoming action. William tried to explain in the simplest terms. Stepping away from the role of a working royal was a choice. Harry had made that choice and built a life of his own. But according to the arguments being raised during the review process, retaining a place in the line of succession while simultaneously refusing the possibility of fulfilling the constitutional duties attached to that position was an entirely different matter. Harry reacted immediately. To him, words like responsibility, status, or review merely served to make a family punishment sound more legitimate. He looked at William as if his worst suspicions had finally been confirmed. Then the conversation reached its most sensitive point: Archie and Lilibet. Harry was no longer speaking only for himself. He challenged why the children should lose what was theirs by birthright simply because their father had chosen a different life. William immediately insisted that Archie and Lilibet were not being judged for their parents' decisions, but he did not offer the promise Harry wanted to hear. William could not guarantee that their constitutional position would remain unchanged if the responsibilities underpinning that structure were rejected. The answer only made Harry angrier. He slid the revised order of succession across the table. William did not touch it. A long silence stretched between them. Then William said something Harry was completely unprepared to hear. "I asked for more time for you." Harry froze. William explained that when the review process was poised to move forward, he had personally asked the advisors to delay it. He wanted Harry to have one more chance to reconsider the Windsor commitment, and that request had been granted. For months, Harry had viewed William as part of the pressure driving him into a corner. Yet the brother he had suspected was the very person who had quietly extended the deadline. The anger on Harry's face began to shift. If William wasn't the one pushing the process forward, then who had allowed it to proceed? William did not shy away from the answer. Charles. It was their father who had waited for the extension to expire. And when Harry's signature still failed to appear, Charles had allowed the review process to move to the next stage. In that moment, Harry seemed to realize that the resentment he had harbored for months had been directed at the wrong person. He looked at William for a long time, then asked quietly, "Could he stop it?" William looked down at the document lying between them. "I already asked for more time once. There is no more." There was no sense of triumph in that answer, only a sense of helplessness. For the issue had now moved far beyond the conflict between the two brothers. William was no longer in a position to buy more time, nor could Harry simply walk out of a room to stave off the consequences. All the warnings, the letters, the unsigned pledges, and the expired deadlines are now converging on a single place: King Charles's desk. And this time, the person facing the hardest decision is not merely a monarch striving to safeguard the future of the crown. He is also a father, being asked to put pen to a decision that could drive his own son and grandchildren further away than ever before. And then everything that had transpired over the preceding months was laid out before Charles. The letters sent to Harry, the unsigned Windsor Agreement, warnings regarding constitutional obligations, William's request for an extension, and finally the proposal to allow the review process to proceed to its decisive stage. Charles sat in silence before the entire dossier. Edward was close by. William stood a few paces away, saying nothing. Perhaps no one in the room understood the journey to this moment better than Edward. He had witnessed Charles's attempts to find a compromise with his son. He had been there when Harry pushed the agreement back, refusing to sign it. He knew William had secretly asked for more time, and now he knew the final deadline had passed. Edward looked at his brother and asked the question no one else seemed willing to voice. Can it be delayed again? Charles remained silent for a few seconds. But the final answer was clear. Extensions had already been granted. Harry had been given extra time. To delay further, simply because no one wanted to face the consequences, would render the entire process meaningless. That was Charles's tragedy in that moment. As a father, he had every reason to want another day, another week, or even one more chance. But as king, he knew the ambiguity could not last forever. Then another section of the dossier was opened, a sealing clause. William's attention was immediately drawn to it. Inside lay a mechanism that had not previously been made public, a restoration mechanism. The decision did not necessarily have to close the door on Harry forever. If Harry accepted the constitutional conditions laid out before the deadline, his status could be reconsidered. It was a very narrow path, but it was a path nonetheless. William looked at his father and instantly grasped the true meaning behind that clause. The king was closing the door, yet his father had refused to lock it completely. Charles reached for the pen. No one spoke. He signed, just a few strokes of ink, yet they carried the weight of months of arguments, silences, and missed opportunities. Charles removed his glasses, set them on the table, and let the pen drop from his hand. Edward looked at him. "So, is this the final decision?" Charles needed no long answer. On paper, everything was all but settled. But in a father's heart, nothing was truly resolved. For Harry still held one final option. Charles had been unable to keep things as they were, yet he had left his son a path back should Harry choose to walk it. And now the burden shifted to Edward. He was tasked with confirming a decision he had not initiated, had not fought for, and certainly did not view as a victory. Edward looked down at the file. He understood that the moment those words were spoken, a crisis that had existed behind closed doors would cease to be a private family matter. But before Edward could tell the world what had changed, another notice had to reach Harry, and this time, he would see not only his own name, but also the names of Archie and Lilibet. But before that decision became a story for the whole world, it had to reach the person who would bear the most direct consequences. Harry received the notification in silence. He was already aware that a review process was underway. He also understood that refusing the Windsor pledge could not go without consequences. Yet knowing something might happen and actually seeing it set down in writing were two entirely different things. Harry read his own name first. He paused, then read on. Then his eyes moved further down the page. Archie, Lilibet. It was those two names that changed everything. Harry could accept a decision directed at himself. He had chosen to step away from royal duties and had refused to sign the pledge, understanding that independence might come at a price. But Archie and Lilibet were different. In that moment, this was no longer merely the consequence of a personal decision. For Harry, it had become a generational issue. A father's choices were now affecting his children's future. Harry read the notification again, and then he saw the provision Charles had included, a restoration clause. The door had not been completely shut. Harry still had a path to request a review of his status. But that path came with a clear condition: he had to accept the constitutional obligations he had previously rejected. In other words, Harry could still return. But he could not maintain a completely independent life while simultaneously demanding that everything within the old structure remain unchanged. While Harry faced that choice, Edward was grappling with the consequences on the other side. He sat with Sophie and admitted that his family's move up the line of succession brought no sense of victory. There was nothing to celebrate. Their new position meant only more scrutiny, higher expectations, and greater responsibility should the crown require it of them. Sophie understood what bothered Edward the most. Their family wasn't moving up because of some achievement. They were moving up because another branch of the family had vacated that position. But it was Catherine who saw a different risk. She realized that William still couldn't truly let the matter go. From start to finish, almost everything between William and Harry had been communicated through the coldest of channels. Written statements, deadlines, warnings, advisors, and constitutional jargon. Catherine understood that if things ended that way, the brothers might remember this crisis not for what they truly wanted to say to each other, but for the documents that had stood between them. She urged William to meet Harry one last time. William initially resisted. He asked for more time. He explained the consequences. Harry had made his choice. What else was there to say? But Catherine didn't ask William to meet Harry as the heir to the throne, nor as the person responsible for safeguarding the future of the crown. She wanted him to meet Harry in only one capacity, as a brother. In the end, William agreed. This time, there would be no aides in the room, no advisors, no private secretaries, no pages filled with clauses for them to point at instead of voicing their true feelings. The palace had said enough. The Constitution had said enough. Now it was just William and Harry. And for the first time since the crisis began, the brothers would sit face to face with no palace rhetoric left to hide behind. Harry's next choice would determine more than just his place in the line of succession. It would let William know whether his younger brother still wanted to keep any doors open to his old life. And as the door closed behind them, everything that had once stood between William and Harry seemed to be left outside. No advisors, no private secretaries, no talk of the line of succession or constitutional responsibilities coming between them. This time they simply sat facing each other as brothers. William spoke first. He didn't start with the crown. He made no mention of the deadline that had passed or the decision Charles had just signed. Instead, William acknowledged something he had been unable to put into words for months. He had feared losing Harry long before the order of succession changed. That was no longer the voice of the heir to the throne. Those were the words of an older brother who had watched the distance between them grow but didn't know how to stop it. Harry remained silent. Then he voiced his own fears. He feared that returning would mean losing himself. For Harry, this had never been merely a debate about his place in the line of succession. Returning meant once again accepting the obligations he had spent years trying to leave behind. And Harry did not want to rebuild his life, only to hold a position he was no longer certain he wanted to belong to. William did not try to persuade his brother with sentiment. He said he could not ask Harry to return to a life Harry no longer wanted. But neither could William say the opposite just to keep the peace. A place in the line of succession could not be merely a title on paper. If it carried constitutional significance, it had to come with responsibilities. This time, Harry did not argue. He listened. Then he spoke of Archie and Lilibet. Harry did not want his children growing up under the weight of the very expectations he had tried to escape. If the price of retaining his position was bringing his family back into a system he had chosen to leave, then for Harry, that price was too high. His family's independence mattered more than rank, and returning only to reclaim what had been lost would render everything he had built meaningless. Harry looked down at the file regarding the restoration. The path Charles had left open was still there. If Harry simply accepted the stipulated conditions, the door could be reopened. Harry placed his hand on the file. William did not stop him, nor did he urge him on. Harry slowly closed it. He would not sign. He would not trigger the restoration. He would not ask Charles to reverse his decision based on paternal sentiment. He would not continue the fight merely to regain a position. Harry accepted that the independence he had chosen would entail lasting consequences. William looked at the closed file and understood that the final decision had been made. But before the meeting ended, there was one more thing he wanted Harry to know. William could not promise that everything regarding the line of succession would return to the way it was. Nor could he undo what had happened. But there was a line William did not want the crown to cross. Archie and Lilibet might no longer hold the same place within the constitutional structure, but in his eyes they would never become less important members of the family. Harry looked at his brother for a long moment. There was no grand embrace, no declaration that everything was forgiven. Years of hurt between them could not vanish after a single conversation. But for the first time, the two of them managed to separate two things the crisis had constantly conflated: the crown and the family. The crown could define responsibilities. The crown could define rank. The crown could even alter a list. But the crown could not fully dictate what the two brothers meant to each other. Harry stood up, his choice clear. He chose freedom. William remained behind, shouldering the responsibilities of the heir. And as the two brothers left the room, their private argument had all but concluded. But by the following morning, the whole of Britain would begin to debate on their behalf. Television news programs endlessly analyzed the new order of succession. Newspapers splashed the names of those who had shifted positions across their front pages. Outside Buckingham Palace, small crowds began to gather, each person holding a different view on the decision that had just been announced. One side argued that if a person retained a place in the line of succession, they had to be prepared to accept the accompanying responsibilities. One could not hold the status while completely rejecting the obligations. But the other side posed a more difficult question. Should a position held since birth be altered by disagreements over royal duties and a family rift? Amidst the debate, a striking headline appeared: "Harry out." Just 2 words. Yet they distilled months of anguish, private meetings, and agonizing decisions into a cold, stark conclusion. Edward saw the headline while sitting with Sophie. On television, some commentators began calling him the biggest beneficiary. Edward disliked that phrasing. His family had indeed moved up the line of succession, but to Edward, this was never a reward. A higher position meant greater expectations, heavier responsibilities, and the need to be ready should the crown require their services. More importantly, they had only moved up because another branch of their own family had just stepped away. There was nothing about it that felt like a victory. Charles, too, was monitoring the public reaction. Then a broadcaster uttered the words he likely least wanted to hear. A king had chosen the crown over his own son. Charles immediately turned off the television. He offered no rebuttal. He did not ask the palace to issue a defense. He made no attempt to explain that Harry had been offered more time, or that a path to reinstatement had been left open. He simply sat in silence, for no matter how many constitutional terms were used to explain the decision, Charles understood that for many, the story would always be remembered as a tragedy between a father and his son. Then the palace issued the final confirmation. Harry did not trigger the restoration process. He did not sign the necessary terms to request a review of his status. The new order of succession was finalized. Edward and his family moved up the line. Harry, Archie, and Lilibet remained outside that structure. William gained the clarity required of an heir, yet the rift with his younger brother persisted. Harry retained the independence he had chosen, but had to accept the accompanying cost. Charles secured clarity for the crown, yet could not avoid the personal toll on a father. At the end of the day, he returned to the Windsor Declaration that Harry had refused to sign. Charles opened it. His gaze rested on the space reserved for his son's signature. He lightly touched the page. Then he closed the document and placed it in a private drawer. Charles did not destroy it, for while the king had accepted the decision, the father had never fully closed the door. The order of succession was finally clear, but the family was no longer the same. There were no true winners, each simply learned to live with the consequences of the choices they had made. Do you think Harry was right to choose freedom for his family? Or should a place in the line of succession always come with responsibility? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future royal stories.